in the summer of 1911, in a dairy settlement in Lancaster County, a woman in a plain apron carried 2 full pails up from the milking barn before the sun cleared the ridge. She strained the milk through cloth into stone crocks, set half of it down the spring house steps into water that never warmed past 50 degrees, and let the other half sit on the kitchen shelf. By Thursday, 1 crock was butter, buttermilk, and farmer's cheese, feeding 6 children. The other crock, the one nobody had touched right, made the youngest boy sick for 3 days. Same milk, same cow, same morning, 2 different outcomes. Here's the twist nobody tells you when they sell you the no ice, no fridge version of this story. They weren't keeping milk safe. They were keeping it moving, turning it into something else before it had the chance to turn on them. That's the whole secret, and it's the piece every viral version of this leaves out. I'm going to walk you through what the old dairy settlements actually did in order the way it was done for 150 years before the compressor and the coil showed up in every kitchen in America. And I'm going to give you the one piece almost nobody puts on the label, the difference between milk that turned into food and milk that turned into a doctor's visit. My name's Samuel Penner. My mother's people kept a dairy herd in 3 counties across 4 generations before the co-op trucks started coming twice a day. My grandmother ran a spring house until she was 81. This is her method, not a legend, the actual chore list she kept on a nail by the door. There are 6 pieces to this. Miss the first few, you lose the cream. Miss the last one, you lose the trust of everyone at your table. We build to it. Piece 1, the milk never sat still. The first thing to understand is that a Mennonite dairy kitchen was never trying to keep milk as milk for a week. That's the myth in the title, and it's worth saying plainly. Raw milk sitting warm on a shelf does not stay safe for a week. It sours, and soured milk is either something you use on purpose or something that's gone wrong. The whole skill was knowing which one you had. The moment milk came in from the barn, it was already moving toward one of 4 things: cream and butter, clabber, cheese, or whey. Nothing sat around as is, waiting to be decided about later. That's the piece every retelling of this skips, because we kept raw milk fresh a week sells better than we turned milk into 5 different foods before it could go bad. Strain it warm through clean cloth within the hour of milking. Bacteria that gets a head start in warm milk wins the race every time. That's not folklore, that's basic microbiology, and the old dairy women understood the timing even without the word for it. Piece 2, the spring house was the real refrigerator. Before there was an ice box, there was a spring house, a small stone building built directly over or beside a running spring where the water temperature held steady in the mid-40s to low 50s year-round. Crocks of milk and cream sat submerged up to their necks in that flowing water, not sitting in the air. This is the correction to make here because it matters. This is refrigeration. Cold running spring water at 45, 50 degrees does real measurable cooling. It's just not mechanical. Communities that didn't have a spring-built root cellars dug into a hillside or used a covered well with a bucket lowered on a rope, keeping crocks just above the water line. Some Mennonite communities that could access a frozen pond in winter did cut and store ice in a straw-packed ice house, so no ice wasn't universal even in the old days. What made the method work everywhere, ice or no ice, was the same principle. Get the milk as cold as the land would give you, fast, and keep it there. Piece 3, cream. Came off within a day. Milk left to sit separates on its own. Cream rises to the top within 12 to 24 hours in a cool crock. That cream got skimmed off daily with a flat skimmer or ladle and moved into its own crock, also kept cold, building up over several days until there was enough to churn. Skimmed cream, kept cold and churned within a few days, became butter, one of the two genuinely long-keeping dairy foods on this whole list. Worked butter with the buttermilk pressed and washed thoroughly out of it, then packed under a layer of salt or brine, would hold for weeks without any refrigeration at all. Salt is doing the same preservation work here that it does on meat, pulling water out, starving the bacteria that need it. The skimmed milk left behind, thinner, lower in fat, didn't go to waste. That's piece 4. Piece 4, clabber, on purpose. This is the piece that surprises people most. Souring milk wasn't always an accident. Skimmed milk left in a warm corner of the kitchen, not the spring house, the warm corner on purpose, with a bit of the previous day's soured milk stirred in, would thicken into clabber within a day or two. A naturally cultured, tangy, yogurt-like set milk, alive with the same kind of beneficial bacteria that make yogurt and buttermilk safe cultured foods today. Clabber got eaten on its own with a spoonful of molasses or maple syrup used in baking in place of buttermilk or pressed further into cheese. The children didn't get sick from clabber. They got sick from milk that soured unintentionally in the wrong container at the wrong temperature, without the culture that keeps the wrong bacteria from taking hold. That distinction is the whole ball game, and we'll come back to it. Piece 5. Farmer's cheese and whey clabber, gently heated over a low fire until it separated into curds and whey, then poured through cloth and pressed under a weight overnight, became a simple farmer's cheese, sometimes called cup cheese in Pennsylvania Dutch country. Salted lightly, wrapped in cloth, and kept in the spring house, a firm farmer's cheese held for 1 to 2 weeks, dried harder and salted more heavily. Some pressed cheeses held for months. The whey that drained off wasn't thrown out either. It went to the hogs, into bread dough in place of water, or was saved as a starter for the next batch of clabber. Nothing about this system wasted the milk or asked it to sit around unchanged. Every piece of it was moving toward butter, cheese, clabber, or the animals within days. Piece 6, how to tell cultured from spoiled. Here's the piece that gets left out of the week without ice version of this story, and it's the one that actually matters for you today in your kitchen. Intentionally soured milk, clabber, buttermilk, cultured cream, smells clean and tangy, sets into an even custard-like curd, and tastes pleasantly sour, not bitter or foul. That's lactic acid bacteria doing exactly what they're supposed to do, the same organisms that make modern yogurt and cultured buttermilk safe to eat. Spoiled milk, the kind that made that boy sick, smells off, rotten, or sulfurous rather than tangy, separates unevenly into slimy curds and discolored liquid, and often shows gas bubbles or an unpleasant bitter aftertaste. That's a different population of bacteria altogether, and no amount of "it's just soured" folk wisdom makes it safe to drink. When in doubt, the old rule was simple, and it still holds. Smell it, look at the set, and when it's genuinely uncertain, it goes to the hogs, not the table. This is also why raw milk carries real risk today that it didn't always carry a century ago in the same way. Modern raw milk can carry pathogens like E. coli, salmonella, and listeria that don't announce themselves with an obvious bad smell the way ordinary spoilage does. The old system worked because milk moved fast, got cold fast, and got either cultured on purpose or heated through, not because raw milk is inherently forgiving if you just wait it out for a week. The whole method, start to finish strain, warm milk within the hour, cool it fast in spring water, a cellar, or an ice house. Cold is cold, however you get there. Skim the cream daily and churn it into salted butter within a few days. Culture the skimmed milk into clabber on purpose, or heat it into farmer's cheese. Use the whey. And always, always know the difference between a clean, tangy sour and a foul one, because that difference is the one the modern version of this story leaves out to make the headline work. That's the method. Butter and pressed cheese hold for weeks without mechanical refrigeration. Milk itself never did, and no dairy household that survived 100 winters ever pretended otherwise. If you want to try the smallest version of this at home this week, buy a quart of good cream, let it come to room temperature, and churn it in a jar until it separates into butter and buttermilk. Wash the butter, salt it, and taste the difference between working with milk on purpose and just hoping it holds. Tell me in the comments, did your family keep a spring house, a cellar, or an ice house? Different regions did this differently, and the version with the most detail is the one I'll go deeper on next.